Within each of us lies a journey that is both ancient and deeply personal, a journey toward the discovery of who we truly are. It is a journey of transformation where we face our darkest fears, embrace our hidden selves, and awaken to our fullest potential. Inspired by the work of Carl Jung, this is a path not defined by external achievements or societal approval, but by the deep inner quest to understand the archetypes, the shadows, and the very essence of our being. Through this exploration, we uncover profound truths that lead us to wholeness, embracing both light and dark as essential parts of our humanity. This is the hero's journey within, and it is the path toward integrating all parts of ourselves to become more than we ever thought possible. From the moment we open our eyes to the world, we begin living a story. Not just any story, but one filled with challenges, choices, dreams, fears, and endless transformation. It may not seem like it, but every one of us is on a personal journey, an inner adventure. This journey isn't marked by dragons or castles, but by emotional struggles, identity crises, and the pursuit of meaning. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, believed that human life is shaped by a deep inner narrative, one that is both ancient and personal. He called this the path toward individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are beneath the layers of expectation and fear. Jung suggested that we are not blank slates. We are born with blueprints, patterns that have existed in the collective unconscious for generations. These patterns, or archetypes, are the symbols and roles that appear again and again in myths, dreams, and stories across cultures. Among them is the hero, a figure who leaves the known world behind to confront the unknown and return transformed. Sound familiar? That's because this pattern lives in each of us. The hero's journey, made famous by Joseph Campbell but deeply rooted in Jungian psychology, mirrors the journey of our inner self as we grow, evolve, and face our fears. What makes this journey so fascinating is that it doesn't happen in far-off lands. It happens within our minds, our emotions, and our choices. You might be a student struggling with direction, a parent rediscovering yourself after years of sacrifice, or someone facing deep emotional pain. Wherever you are, you're not just living, you're journeying. And like all heroes, you're being called to transform. But the path is not straightforward. Jung believed that our greatest potential often lies buried beneath the parts of ourselves we ignore or repress. These hidden parts form what he called the shadow. To truly grow, we must face this darkness, not to destroy it, but to understand and integrate it. That's the first sign that we're on the path of the hero, the willingness to look within and confront what we find. So why does this matter? Because without understanding our inner journey, we often feel lost, reactive, or stuck. We repeat harmful patterns, avoid discomfort, and project our unresolved issues onto others. But with awareness, we begin to see that life's challenges are not random, they are invitations. Each setback, heartbreak, or fear is a symbolic dragon guarding something precious, a deeper truth about who we are and who we are meant to become. Jung's work teaches us that personal growth is not about perfection, it's about wholeness. Becoming whole doesn't mean eliminating flaws, it means acknowledging all parts of ourselves, even the ones we dislike or don't understand. In myths, the hero rarely wins because they are perfect. They win because they are brave enough to keep going, to change, to listen, and to grow. In our modern world, it's easy to get disconnected from this inner story. We're surrounded by distractions, demands, and constant noise. But deep down, something calls us. That inner voice that whispers, "There's more to you than this." That's the call to adventure. Jung would say it's your unconscious nudging you toward the next chapter of your evolution. This video is an invitation to explore that call, to learn how the ancient archetypes inside you The hero, the shadow, the wise old man, the anima, and more are active in your daily life, shaping your thoughts, feelings, and choices. You'll see how understanding these forces can lead to self-awareness, healing, and empowerment. So, as we begin this journey together, I invite you to pause and reflect. What part of your story are you living right now? Are you in the middle of a trial, standing at a crossroads, or just beginning to sense a shift inside you? Wherever you are not alone. You are not off track. You are exactly where you need to be to begin your hero's journey within. And as we go forward, remember this: the story of personal growth is not a straight line. It's a spiral, a dance, a sacred unfolding of who you were always meant to become. To understand the journey of personal growth, we must first understand the mapmaker behind it, Carl Gustav Jung. Jung was not just a psychiatrist. He was an explorer of the soul. He believed that our behavior, emotions, and thoughts are not just shaped by what happens in our lives, but by deeper forces within the mind, forces we are often unaware of. These unconscious forces hold the key to understanding ourselves, and unlocking them can lead to powerful personal transformation. Jung's most important contribution was the concept of the psyche, which he believed had both conscious and unconscious parts. The conscious mind is what we are aware of, our thoughts, decisions, actions. But beneath that lies the unconscious, a vast ocean of feelings, memories, and instincts that influence us without our awareness. According to Jung, the unconscious is not just personal, but also collective, a shared memory of human experience that we inherit at birth. He called this the collective unconscious, and within it live the archetypes, universal patterns of behavior, emotion, and symbolism. Archetypes are like inner characters that shape how we see the world and react to it. Think of the nurturing mother, the brave hero, the wise mentor, or the dark shadow. These figures show up again and again in myths, dreams, fairy tales, and even movies because they are expressions of something deep and universal within all of us. We may not see them directly, but we live through them every day. Jung believed that we begin life in a state of psychological wholeness, but as we grow up, we start splitting off parts of ourselves. We adopt roles, suppress certain feelings, and try to fit into society's expectations. In doing so, we often lose touch with who we really are. Our true self becomes hidden behind masks and habits. This is where problems begin: anxiety, depression, confusion, because we are no longer aligned with our inner truth. To heal, Jung said, we must reconnect with the parts we've lost. This process is called individuation, becoming the person you were always meant to be. It's not about becoming perfect, but about becoming whole. And to do this, we must make the unconscious conscious. That means looking at our dreams, listening to our emotions, and becoming aware of the deeper motivations behind our behavior. One of the tools Jung used for this was dream analysis. He believed that dreams are not random or meaningless. They are messages from the unconscious, written in the language of symbols. When you dream of falling, flying, being chased, or finding treasure, your psyche is trying to tell you something. By interpreting these symbols, you can uncover truths about yourself that your waking mind may not see. Jung also introduced the idea of personality types, which later influenced the famous Myers-Briggs type indicator. He identified two major attitudes, introversion and extroversion, and four main functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Each person has a unique blend of these qualities, and understanding your type can help you make better decisions, improve relationships, and find your purpose. But Jung's real genius was in showing us that life is not just something we live on the surface. There is a rich inner world waiting to be discovered, and the more we explore it, the more we grow. He said, Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. This is the heart of Jungian psychology, the belief that true growth comes from within, from facing ourselves honestly and integrating the parts we've denied or ignored. Carl Jung didn't just give us theories. He gave us a mirror to look into our own souls. He showed us that our struggles have meaning, that our pain can lead to purpose, and that every person has a deep inner story worth listening to. In a world that often encourages us to look outward, Jung gently turns our gaze inward, toward the depths of the psyche where the real transformation begins. Understanding his ideas is the first step in reclaiming our power, healing old wounds, and stepping fully into the story of who we truly are. The hero is perhaps the most well-known archetype in all of Jungian psychology. We see it everywhere, in ancient myths, in modern films, in novels, and most importantly, within ourselves. According to Carl Jung, the hero is not just a character in stories. It's a symbol of our inner self that seeks to grow, evolve, and overcome the limitations of the ego. Every time we step into discomfort, face a fear, or make a bold decision to change, the hero within us is rising. The hero's journey begins with a call. It may be a life crisis, a deep dissatisfaction, or a sudden realization that things cannot stay the same. This call invites us to leave the familiar and venture into the unknown. Most people resist at first. They doubt themselves or cling to what's comfortable. But the true hero, even in fear, takes the first step. Jung believed this was the moment when the ego, the part of us that identifies with being in control, is challenged, and the deeper self starts to emerge. The hero represents our capacity for transformation. We all have the potential to become more than we are, but that path is never easy. It's filled with tests, doubts, and symbolic dragons. These dragons aren't real monsters. They are our inner fears, traumas, limiting beliefs, and emotional wounds. Facing them requires strength, but also humility. It means accepting that growth will demand pain, confusion, and the loss of the old self. Yet it's through these very trials that the hero earns wisdom. Jung emphasized that the hero is not just about bravery or glory. It's about psychological maturity. We begin life heavily dependent on others, driven by unconscious needs and behaviors. But as we grow, we're called to take responsibility for our lives, our decisions, and our healing. This is the hero's task, to take ownership of the journey, even when the path is unclear. To say, I may not know everything, but I am willing to find out. The hero also learns along the way that power is not about dominance. True power comes from self-awareness, compassion, and resilience. In myths, the hero often gains a special weapon, a gift, or a treasure. Symbolically, this represents insight, the deep inner wisdom gained from facing the darkest parts of oneself. This is how we grow, not by avoiding our pain, but by learning from it and allowing it to shape us into something greater. Jung believed that the hero doesn't act alone. Often a guide or mentor appears to offer direction. This could be an actual person, a spiritual experience, or a new insight that changes the hero's perspective. But even with help, the true test always lies within. The hero must still choose to act. That's the difference between staying stuck and evolving. Importantly, the hero also serves others. After completing the journey, they return with knowledge or healing for the community. Jung saw this as a symbol of individuation, the process of becoming whole and using that wholeness not just for personal gain, but to contribute to the world. So the hero's journey is both inner and outer. It's about becoming your true self and living in a way that reflects that truth. The hero archetype is active in your life every time you feel the pull to change. When you challenge an old pattern, leave a toxic relationship, start something new, or confront a painful truth, You are stepping into your own heroic story. It doesn't matter how big or small the step is. What matters is the direction, forward, deeper, closer to authenticity. Jung taught us that the hero is not perfect, fearless, or always confident. In fact, the hero often feels lost and unsure, but they keep going. That's the essence of courage, not the absence of fear, but the decision to move through it. So ask yourself, where in your life are you being called to grow? What part of you is afraid, yet curious? That is the hero in you, stirring. The one who dares to question, to seek, to transform. You don't have to have all the answers. You just need to answer the call. The rest unfolds step by step as the story of your own inner hero begins to take shape. In every great story, the hero must face a monster. Sometimes it's a dragon, a dark lord, or a hidden enemy. In Jungian psychology, that monster lives within us, and it is called the shadow. The shadow is not evil in itself, but it represents the parts of ourselves that we hide, deny, or reject. Carl Jung believed that one of the most powerful steps in personal growth is confronting the shadow, not to destroy it, but to understand and integrate it. The shadow begins forming in early childhood. As we grow up, we are taught what is acceptable and what isn't, what emotions are okay to express, what thoughts are shameful, what parts of our personality should be hidden. So we push those unwanted aspects into the unconscious. This can include anger, jealousy, selfishness, sexual desires, or even talents and ambitions that we were told not to express. All of it becomes the shadow. But here's the key. What we push down doesn't disappear. It lives in our unconscious and influences our behavior in subtle, often harmful ways. We might project our shadow onto others, accusing them of the very traits we can't accept in ourselves. Or we might sabotage our own happiness without understanding why. The shadow operates like a hidden script, shaping our lives from behind the scenes. Jung warned that if we ignore the shadow, it grows stronger. It can lead to anxiety, depression, addiction, rage, or a sense of emptiness. That's why facing it is so important. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Facing the shadow means acknowledging the uncomfortable truths about ourselves, not to judge them, but to understand them. This is not easy. Confronting the shadow often brings shame, fear, or pain, but it also brings freedom, because the shadow doesn't only hold darkness, it holds power. The energy we spend hiding parts of ourselves can be transformed into creativity, strength, and wisdom. When we accept our flaws, we become more whole. When we forgive ourselves, we become more compassionate. Jung believed that dreams are one of the main ways the shadow communicates with us. The frightening or embarrassing figures in our dreams often represent disowned parts of the self. If you dream of being chased, trapped, or judged, your unconscious may be inviting you to look at something you've been avoiding. By paying attention to these symbols, we begin a dialogue with the shadow. Another way the shadow shows up is in our emotional triggers. If someone makes you irrationally angry or uncomfortable, ask yourself why. Often we are most disturbed by others who reflect something we dislike or fear in ourselves. This is projection, a defense mechanism that helps us avoid the pain of self-awareness. But if we're brave enough to examine our reactions, we may find that the problem is not out there, but within us. Integrating the shadow does not mean acting on every impulse or desire. It means understanding them, accepting that they are part of the human experience, and choosing how to respond consciously. It's about moving from repression to awareness. Only then can we take full responsibility for our lives and grow into our full potential. Jung often used the alchemical symbol of gold hidden in lead to describe the shadow. At first, it seems dark, heavy, and unwanted. but within it is something precious, raw energy for transformation. When we face our shadow, we begin to reclaim that energy. We become less reactive, more honest, and more empowered. We stop needing to pretend, to please, or to control everything. We start living from a deeper truth. The hero's journey always includes this descent into darkness. It is the point where the hero meets the shadow, sometimes in the form of failure, loss, or inner chaos. But those who are willing to face it emerge stronger, wiser, and more whole. The shadow is not the enemy. It is a mirror. It shows us who we really are beyond the masks. And in that mirror, if we dare to look long enough, we find not just the parts we fear, but the parts we've been waiting to reclaim. Carl Jung believed that each of us carries within our psyche both masculine and feminine qualities regardless of our gender. He called these inner counterparts the anima, the feminine side of a man's psyche, and the animus, the masculine side of a woman's psyche. These are not about gender roles or stereotypes. They are symbolic energies that exist within every human being. Integrating them is essential for psychological balance, self-understanding, and true inner harmony. The anima and animus are archetypes from the collective unconscious. They represent the parts of us that are often undeveloped or suppressed due to social conditioning. For example, men are often encouraged to be strong, logical, and assertive, while being sensitive, nurturing, or emotionally open may be discouraged. As a result, their anima, the emotional, intuitive, and creative side, may remain unconscious or underdeveloped. Women, on the other hand, are often raised to be caring and receptive, but may suppress their inner strength, assertiveness, or rational clarity, the qualities of the animus. When the anima or animus remains unconscious, it can distort our behavior and relationships. A man who rejects his anima might become emotionally distant, over-controlling, or unable to express vulnerability. A woman disconnected from her animus may struggle to assert herself, set boundaries, or think independently. Worse, when we are unaware of these forces, we tend to project them onto others, especially in romantic relationships. We may fall in love not with the real person, but with our inner image of the ideal man or ideal woman. This often leads to disappointment, misunderstanding, and emotional turmoil. Jung taught that true psychological maturity requires us to withdraw these projections and begin a conscious relationship with our anima or animus. For a man, this means learning to listen to his emotions, honor his intuition, and value creativity. For a woman, it means developing confidence, thinking critically, and expressing her voice in the world. The goal is not to become someone else, but to become more whole, to embrace the full spectrum of human experience within yourself. Dreams often reveal the presence of the anima, or animus, through symbolic figures. A man may dream of a mysterious or seductive woman, sometimes guiding, sometimes destructive. This is his anima seeking his attention. She may appear as a healer, artist, or wise figure, urging him to explore his inner emotional life. A woman may dream of a strong or opinionated man, sometimes as a protector, sometimes as a tyrant. This is her animus, reflecting her inner authority and intellect. The more we interact with these inner figures consciously, the more they evolve. A man's anima may mature from a shallow, seductive figure to a wise inner guide who helps him connect with compassion and depth. A woman's animus may grow from a rigid, critical voice into a balanced inner support that empowers her to act with courage and conviction. Integrating the anima and animus can be a deeply healing process. It allows us to relate to others more authentically and with less projection. Relationships become less about completing ourselves through others and more about mutual growth. It also enhances creativity, emotional intelligence, and self-understanding. Jung believed this integration was a key step on the path to individuation. the journey of becoming a whole and unified self. In a deeper sense, the anima and animus are gateways to the soul. They connect us with the inner world of imagination, dreams, and spirit. They help us move beyond rigid identities and discover the richness of being human. When a man embraces his anima, he becomes more fully himself, not less masculine, but more deeply human. When a woman integrates her animus, she doesn't lose her femininity. She becomes more grounded, expressive, and free. So the question for each of us is, what parts of myself have I been taught to ignore or suppress? What traits do I admire or judge in others that may actually reflect undeveloped aspects of me? The anima and animus are not distant myths. They live in your emotions, your thoughts, your relationships, your dreams. To grow is to recognize them, listen to them, and learn from them. And as you do, you take one more step toward inner wholeness, toward becoming the balanced, authentic, and fully alive person you were always meant to be. At the heart of Carl Jung's psychology lies a powerful idea. The goal of life is not perfection, but wholeness. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming your true self by integrating all the different parts of your psyche. This includes the parts you show the world and the ones you hide, the conscious and the unconscious, the light and the shadow. Individuation is not a one-time achievement. It's a lifelong path of self-discovery, transformation, and inner harmony. Individuation begins when we realize that the life we've been living no longer feels authentic. Maybe we're tired of wearing masks, repeating old patterns, or feeling disconnected from our inner truth. This awakening often feels uncomfortable. It may come during a personal crisis, a loss, or a deep sense of emptiness, but it's also the moment when real growth begins. Jung believed that this discomfort is the soul's way of calling us inward to begin the work of integration. To individuate, we must first become aware of our ego, the conscious part of our personality that we identify with. The ego likes control and certainty. It builds a sense of self based on roles, beliefs, and routines, but it is limited. Beneath the ego lies the self, a deeper center of consciousness that holds our full potential. The self is not just who we think we are, it's who we truly are when all our fragmented parts come into alignment. Individuation is the movement from ego-centered living to self-centered living. This doesn't mean becoming selfish, it means becoming authentic. To do this, we must confront the unconscious. That includes facing the shadow, understanding our projections, exploring the anima and animus, and listening to the messages of our dreams. Every step we take into the unknown parts of ourselves brings more balance and clarity. One of the unique aspects of individuation is that it's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more of yourself, the version of you that is whole, real, and connected to something greater than your day-to-day identity. Jung said that the self is both the center and the totality of the psyche. When we align with the self, we experience a sense of peace, purpose, and inner stability, even in the face of life's chaos. Jung used many symbols to describe individuation. One of the most famous is the mandala, a circular pattern that represents unity and completeness. He found that people in the process of individuation often drew mandalas in dreams or art without even realizing it. These symbols express the soul's longing for integration, for the many inner voices to become one harmonious whole. But individuation is not a straight line. It involves setbacks, doubts, and cycles of renewal. Sometimes the process requires us to let go of relationships, careers, or identities that no longer serve us. This can be painful, but necessary. Just like a snake sheds its skin, we too must release what is false in order to grow into what is true. The path asks for courage, but it also offers deep rewards. Another important part of individuation is listening to your inner voice, your intuition, your creativity, your inner guide. This voice may have been ignored for years, buried under external expectations, but as you individuate, it grows louder and clearer. It helps you make choices that align with your soul, rather than just following the crowd or pleasing others. Relationships also change through individuation. We begin to see others not as reflections of our own needs, but as fellow travelers on their own paths. We become more compassionate, less reactive, and more capable of true intimacy, because we're no longer projecting our inner conflicts onto those around us. In the end, individuation is the hero's journey turned inward. It's not about escaping life, but engaging with it more fully. It's about reclaiming every part of yourself, not just the good, but also the messy, complicated, and mysterious. Jung believed that only by knowing ourselves deeply can we find real meaning and fulfillment. The world often tells us to fix ourselves, improve ourselves, or prove ourselves. But Jung's wisdom is different. It says, know yourself, accept yourself, become yourself. That is the path of individuation. It's not easy, but it is the most important journey you will ever take, because it leads you home to who you truly are. As we walk the path of personal growth, strange things sometimes begin to happen. Moments that feel too perfectly timed, too deeply personal to be dismissed as mere chance. Carl Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity, the occurrence of meaningful coincidences that have no causal connection but feel powerfully significant. Unlike random events, synchronicities touch something deep inside us. They feel like whispers from the unconscious, or even from the universe itself, nudging us forward on our journey. Jung developed the idea of synchronicity alongside physicist Wolfgang Pauli, believing that not everything in life can be explained through logic or cause and effect. Some experiences, he argued, reflect in a causal order, a deeper connection between the inner world, our thoughts, emotions, dreams, and the outer world of events. When an outer event aligns with an inner state in a meaningful way, that's synchronicity. For example, you're thinking about a friend you haven't heard from in years, and suddenly they call. Or you're struggling with a personal decision and randomly come across a quote, song, or symbol that perfectly addresses your dilemma. These moments often feel magical or eerie, but more than anything, they feel deeply personal. That's because they reflect the unconscious, trying to communicate with the conscious mind. In the context of the hero's journey and individuation, synchronicity serves as guidance. When we begin to live more authentically and pay attention to our inner world, we become more sensitive to these subtle signals. It's as if the universe starts speaking a symbolic language through encounters, patterns, signs, or dreams, guiding us toward deeper understanding. Jung saw synchronicity as evidence that our lives are not isolated or accidental, but meaningfully woven into a larger fabric. Synchronicity is closely linked to the concept of archetypes. When we encounter a synchronicity, we often feel as though something archetypal has been activated, like the wise old man, the trickster, or the inner guide. These symbolic figures don't appear just in dreams. They show up through people we meet, books we read, or situations we face, each carrying a message we need to hear. Jung believed that recognizing these patterns helps us grow psychologically and spiritually. Importantly, synchronicity is not about superstition or trying to control the future. It's not about making every little thing mean something. Instead, it's about being attuned, being open to moments of connection between the inner and outer worlds. Synchronicities often happen when we are emotionally intense, in transition, or in search of meaning. The more present and self-aware we are, the more we notice them. Jung also warned that ignoring synchronicities can lead us to feel stuck, lost, or disconnected from our path. These events are often calls to action, They point us toward what we need to confront, heal, or embrace. If something strange keeps showing up, a name, a number, a symbol, a place, it may be asking for your attention. Ask yourself, what am I being shown? What deeper layer of my life is being revealed? For Jung, synchronicity also proved that the psyche is not limited to the brain. It is connected to something larger, the collective unconscious, the deep layer of shared human experience that exists beyond time and space. Through synchronicity, we glimpse the possibility that life is not random or meaningless, but purposeful, that there is a mysterious order unfolding and we are part of it. Some people experience synchronicities during moments of great doubt or suffering. Just when they are about to give up, something unexpected happens that gives them clarity or hope. Others notice them during times of deep reflection, creativity, or transition. These moments don't provide all the answers, but they offer direction, like signs on a dark road, reminding us we're not alone. Ultimately, synchronicity invites us to live with greater awareness and trust. It encourages us to listen, not just with the mind, but with the soul. When we see meaning in the world around us, when we begin to feel that life is speaking to us, we become more connected to our journey. The outer world becomes a mirror of the inner world. And in that reflection, we find purpose, guidance, and the quiet confirmation that we are, indeed, on the right path. At the end of the hero's journey, after facing trials, confronting the shadow, and integrating the unconscious, the traveler does not return with gold or fame. They return with something far more valuable, a deeper connection to the self. In Carl Jung's psychology, the self is not just another part of who we are. It is the central unifying force of the psyche. It is the totality of the conscious and unconscious mind, the true essence of who we are beyond the ego. The self is different from the ego, which is the part of us that identifies with our name, personality, roles, and achievements. The ego is important. It helps us function in daily life, but it is only a small part of the whole. The self, by contrast, includes everything. Our desires, fears, dreams, instincts, values, creativity, and spirituality. It is the full picture, and it holds the blueprint for our growth. Jung saw the self as both the goal and the guide of the individuation process. It's the inner compass drawing us toward wholeness. Even when we feel lost, confused, or broken, the self is quietly at work in the background, pushing us to evolve, to face our truths, and to grow into our potential. It shows up through symbols, dreams, synchronicities, and deep emotional experiences. The more we listen, the more its voice becomes clear. Many spiritual traditions echo Jung's idea of the self. It's similar to the concept of the soul, the higher self, or the divine spark within. But Jung emphasized that the self is not something outside of us. It lives within. It is not an ideal we have to live up to, but a reality we must uncover. And to reach it, we must pass through the very challenges that life places before us. Meeting the self is often symbolized in dreams as encountering a wise old man or woman, a divine child, or a powerful animal, figures that carry great wisdom and clarity. These symbols are not fantasies. They are expressions of deep inner truths. They appear when the ego is ready to step back and make space for a larger, more integrated identity to emerge. But the journey to the self is not always comfortable. It requires us to face what we have avoided, to bring the unconscious into awareness and take responsibility for all aspects of our lives. It also requires surrender. The ego often resists this process, wanting to stay in control, but the self doesn't destroy the ego. It reorganizes it, placing it within a larger framework of meaning and connection. Living from the self means living from inner alignment. It means making choices not based on fear or social pressure, but on what feels true and whole. It means embracing both light and dark within us, not pretending to be perfect, but choosing to be real. When we connect with the self, we often feel a sense of peace, even when life is difficult, a quiet knowing that we are exactly where we need to be. One powerful aspect of the self is its ability to heal. Many psychological symptoms, anxiety, depression, self-doubt, are signs that we are disconnected from our center. As we move closer to the self, these symptoms often begin to shift. We stop fighting with ourselves. We begin to feel more energy, more clarity, more purpose. It's not that problems disappear, but that we gain the strength to face them from a deeper place. Jung believed that society often encourages people to conform rather than to individuate. But those who follow the path of the self become alive in a new way. They may not always fit the mold, but they shine with authenticity. They inspire others, not by being perfect, but by being deeply themselves. This is the greatest gift of all, to become the person you were truly meant to be. The self is the final destination of the inner hero's journey. It's not a place or a title. It's a state of being, a deep, grounded awareness of your full humanity. And while the journey never truly ends, the moment you connect with the self is the moment everything changes. You begin to live not from fear, but from truth. Not from division, but from unity. And in doing so, you don't just transform your own life. You begin to radiate healing and wholeness to the world around you. The process of individuation, the journey toward wholeness, cannot be complete without confronting and integrating the shadow. In Carl Jung's psychology, the shadow represents the unconscious aspects of our personality that we reject, deny, or repress. These parts of ourselves are often seen as undesirable, dark, or morally unacceptable, and as a result, we push them into the depths of the unconscious. However, the shadow is not just the source of our flaws and weaknesses. It also contains vital qualities, creativity, and energy that, when acknowledged, can bring great strength and transformation. The shadow is created through the development of the ego. As children, we begin to form our sense of self in relation to what is deemed acceptable or unacceptable by our family, society, and culture. As we grow, we learn which behaviors, emotions, and characteristics are rewarded and which are punished. Those aspects of ourselves that don't align with these external standards are cast aside and repressed, often forming the shadow. These might include feelings of anger, jealousy, selfishness, vulnerability, or any other emotion or trait that contradicts the idealized version of who we believe we should be. However, the shadow doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. In fact, it becomes more powerful the more we push it away. Often, it reappears in indirect ways through projections, dreams, or even through the actions of others. We may find ourselves feeling irritated or judgmental toward people who exhibit qualities we don't like in ourselves. This is a projection of our own shadow. In relationships, the shadow can manifest as unresolved conflicts, misunderstandings, or unconscious patterns that sabotage our efforts to connect authentically. Jung believed that the integration of the shadow is one of the most important tasks on the path of individuation. Integration doesn't mean trying to rid ourselves of the shadow or erase our undesirable traits. Instead, it means acknowledging these parts of ourselves and learning to embrace them. When we confront the shadow, we cease to deny its existence, and we begin to understand the deeper motives behind our behaviors. We learn that our anger might be a sign of unmet needs, or that our jealousy could stem from feelings of insecurity or fear of loss. Through integration, we begin to accept our full humanity, including both our light and dark aspects. The shadow is not something to fear. It is a source of strength, creativity, and vitality. When we accept the parts of ourselves that we've rejected, we reclaim lost energy and potential. For example, someone who has repressed their anger might find that expressing it in a healthy way can lead to a sense of empowerment and authenticity. Similarly, someone who has suppressed vulnerability might discover that embracing their softer side allows for deeper connections and emotional richness. One of the key aspects of working with the shadow is self-awareness. This means becoming aware of the times when we react impulsively or defensively, and questioning what is really going on beneath the surface. The shadow is often hidden in our automatic responses, our emotional triggers, our judgments, and our fears. By paying attention to these moments, we can start to understand where the shadow is operating and what it is trying to tell us. Jung suggested that we should ask ourselves, what parts of myself do I reject? What qualities in others do I find difficult to accept? Where do I feel weak or afraid? Integration also involves embracing the shadow in others. When we recognize the darkness within ourselves, we become more compassionate toward the darkness in others. Rather than seeing people as good or bad, we begin to understand that everyone has a shadow. We stop projecting our own repressed traits onto others, and we start to accept others as complex and multifaceted beings. This leads to greater empathy, tolerance, and emotional maturity in relationships. The integration of the shadow is also essential for creativity. Many artists, writers, and musicians tap into their shadow to access powerful forms of expression. The repressed, unconscious material of the shadow often contains raw emotional energy and untapped imagination. When we open up to these aspects of ourselves, we release creative potential that can enrich our work and our lives. Jung famously said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Yet it is in this very acceptance that we find freedom. Freedom to create, to love, to be authentic." Ultimately, embracing the shadow is not about trying to become perfect. It is about becoming whole, acknowledging and embracing all parts of ourselves, even the ones we find uncomfortable or painful. It is through the shadow that we come to understand the depths of our being and the complexities of the human experience. By integrating the shadow, we no longer live in fear of our dark side, but live in harmony